All right. Okay. You ready? Let's go.
He's off the racing line, and he's on the marbles. This isn't good. Oh, that is not good. Oh, no!
The marbles, 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 the marbles.
This is a dedicated Formula One podcast brought to you by the most respected, keenest and knowledgeable minds in motorsport racing. The mere fact you're listening to this suggests great sagacity on your part. You're in the right place at the right time. But of course, you already knew that.
I chose to become a soundman, but maybe I'm just a man.
Come on! Now we got ourselves a podcast. We aren't effing around anymore, if I may. What a rush! Woo! Welcome to On the Marbles. I'm your host, Steve Jones, and this is the podcast where we take a sideways look at the exciting world of F1. You know what? Listen, I hate to do this. I don't want to bring down the mood. We're all very excited about our new opening music, but I'm not going to bury my head in the sand. I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room. I have one word for you, and it's a word that featured heavily in numerous scathing reviews of On the Marbles, Episode 1, Season 2. Levels. 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 Now, here's a snapshot of the abuse I had to endure over Twitter. This is from Laura Robinson. The sound levels on the podcast were all over the place. Here's another from Simon Morrison. Love the episode, and I'm glad you're back. But the pod levels are really quiet. Significantly quiet. Phil H. weighs in. Listening to the first On the Marbles podcast, which is great. The levels, however, are not. Phil sticking in the boot there, and with justification, it has to be said, because the levels were not up to snuff. They weren't fit for purpose. You deserve so much better, dear listener. So I'm going to level with you. The truth of the matter is, our sound man was taken ill, and we were forced to improvise. That is the genuine truth. That's the genuine truth. But listen, we don't operate a blame culture here. We ride as one, we die as one. If one fails, we all do. Might be philosophies that other podcasts operate under, not here at On the Marbles. I'm not taking the hit. It was not my fault. Do you hear me? Not my fault. So I'm going to bring in the man who let you down, who let all of us down. Here he is, our sound man, Carl Holmes. Hi, Carl.
Hi.
So, what was this mysterious illness you had?
Well, I think it was a suspected heart attack. But since I was young...
Yeah, all right, Carl. I didn't ask for your life story. This isn't the Dr. Phil podcast, okay? This is On the Marbles. I've written a short apology that I'd like you to read out, please, Carl.
I chose to become a soundman, but maybe I'm just a man, because the sound levels I forced you to listen to in my absence were nothing less than torture. My failure to deliver the dulcet, honey-dipped tones of Mr. Jones's voice into your ears has brought unnecessary torment to you and Mr. Jones. So if you'd like to... I can't read this out.
Carl, read it.
So, if you would like to contact me directly and voice your disappointment in me, please do. My phone number is 077-638-352. My home address, if you'd like to send me a letter or turn up on my doorstep, is 15 Sutton Drive, Railton, Birmingham.
All right, let's hear no more about it and try and have some decent levels today. Thank you, Carl. All right, we've got a great show lined up for you, but first, a word from our sponsors. Today's show is brought to you by a revolutionary new product called the Science Family Time Machine. Here's Carlos Sainz Jr. with more.
Hello, I'm Carlos Sainz Jr., and I'm here to tell you about an exciting new invention that myself and my father, Carlos Sainz Sr., made in our garage at home, the Science Family Time Machine. Have you ever suffered from regret? For example, you wish you hadn't eaten that shrimp that now makes your belly feel funny? Or you wish you hadn't spent 20 years in a loveless marriage? Well, wish no more. Say adios to regret with the Science Family Time Machine. Here's how it works. It blends protons and neutrons in order to twist the fabric of space and time, creating a wormhole that you can step through, returning to, I don't know, May 14th, 2020, and say, no thank you, I'm very happy with my current team. Best of luck with all that going on over there. So, say adios to regret, and be sure to order your Science Family Time Machine, available now at Robert Dias and Tesco. Gracias.
Thank you, Carl Sainz Jr. I'm definitely getting one of those. Brilliant stuff. Okay, so who are your big fat racing brains today? David Coulthard and Alex Jacques. That's who. These are the gentlemen charged with answering your F1-related musings, which you have been sending in to us in your droves over social media. Welcome, chaps. Fabulous to see you. How goes it?
Very good, thank you, handsome Steve. Sorry, just catching my voice there. I wasn't expecting the question to come so fast. I was enjoying the show.
Keep up, DC.
It's gone downhill now. I've started to talk.
No. Alex, how are you doing?
Very good, very good. This is my first on the marbles.
Yeah, a particularly juicy welcome to you, Alex. You join us for the first time here at On the Marbles. I have to say, Alex, you did a fine job in Bahrain, but let's be honest, you know your onions. You now host F1 on Channel 4, as well as F2, F3, F4, F5, F6, F7, F8, F9, and F10.
Yeah.
You are prolific, aren't you?
Yeah, even I think it's getting a bit much. And I'm me.
Well, again, welcome aboard, Alex. Wonderful to have you with us. Now, Bahrain, hot Jiminy. That was a race. Where to begin is the question, DC. And, you know, we've had so many questions about Sebastian Vettel. I'm thinking of renaming this podcast the Sebastian Vettel podcast, maybe On the Vettels or something. What is it about the man that fascinates us so? What is it?
Because he was so good at a certain point in his career, and he's so average now. That's the confusing part. Never has there been such a fall from brilliance of any of the multiple world champions that I can remember. Can you think of any names? You know, There's been one-hit wonders, guys who've won the championship at the right time in the right car, but no one that was, he was a machine during that period. And it was a period where Formula One was pretty close, and there was a number of cars and drivers could win the championship. And now he looks merely good. And as hard as that is for fans of Sebastian to hear, it's also difficult for me to say because I like the man. You know,
Yeah.
I've seen him come up through the Red Bull system. We've shared many a good time together, but we are here to say what we see and to reflect the results, and the results are sadly not there.
Yeah, I mean, outside of the car, as you just mentioned, DC, he is extremely likable. I find him, he's very different to all the other drivers, and I'm drawn to that. You know, Alex, I find him to be clever. He's genuinely funny. You know, he doesn't really do social media. I loved how when he was losing his golden locks, instead of seeking professional help, he just shaved it off.
Yeah.
Which for me just felt like classic Vettel.
He's his own man, isn't he? He's always chosen his own path, and sometimes that's been a little bit extreme on team radio, or it's been demanding behind the scenes. But I think David's right. I think it's a unique case, which is why everyone's talking about it. People couldn't understand how he won 4 in a row. And maybe he didn't get the credit he deserved at the time, and maybe it's manifesting now into too much criticism. Not enough praise at the time, maybe too much criticism now, but we've certainly not seen a multiple champion dip like this.
Yeah, I don't think it is too much criticism. I think that we struggle to criticize because we know that there has been something brilliant there, but this is a tough business where you are judged by your performance out on track, and his performance at Ferrari was lacking, and his performance in that one race for Aston was certainly not at the level that, you know, we all hope that he'd rediscover his mojo during the winter. If he does, we will all say Sebastian is back. Brilliant.
Yeah.
You know, we knew he was in there somewhere. So it will be equal to the results, but it's in his hands. Yeah. He's chosen to continue. He chose to shave his head rather than going to Eddie Jordan's recommended clinic in Dublin. You know, he takes the challenge of being out on track. And this isn't a business of just say nice things because we're all part of the same family. We have to reflect what we think's happening out on track. I took a lot of criticism during my career, rightly so, because I was, inconsistent in my performance. Of course, I didn't like it, but then again, that was part of the job. And if I really didn't like it, I could go off and do something else.
Well, let's continue to ride the Seb train for a little bit longer. Let's begin with a flourish of Vettel-centric questions from our dear listeners. Here's Jeremy Grant. Vettel failed to get out of Q1. He was penalised for speeding under yellow flag conditions. He finished last but won in the race, and Stroll comfortably beat him. Schumacher was last and 16th. Gasly, Latifi, Alonso, and Mazepin did not finish, but you knew that already. Anyway, Jeremy concludes his remarks with the following. Vettel's opening weekend was the racing equivalent of the Hindenburg crashing into the Titanic. 2021 will destroy an already tainted legacy. He should have retired in 2020. Boom. Holy airship.
Yeah, I think that's a bit extreme, isn't it? But I get his point. Yeah, it rests firmly in Sebastian's hands. His legacy, his future is about him getting on top of the regulations. And interestingly, Mark Webber has the view and understands Sebastian's driving style very well, that he just has never really gelled with these big, wide Pirelli tyres. If you actually look at the point at which his career started to drop off, it coincides with that point pretty much. So, let's see. Maybe this weekend he shocks us all. There's got to be one last good race in him, if not more. So let's see how the races play out.
Clarky the Sparky has been on. He begins with, Seb has said he's not at home in his Aston Martin. When might he feel at home in the vehicle? Surely we can all give our favourite German a few races to get up to snuff. Sounds like a fair request, Alex. What do you think?
Yeah, he was still changing things about the layout of the steering wheel, for example, during testing. So I don't think he's entirely happy with how that car is at the moment. That's before you get to the fact that the team is trying to recover some performance because the regulations have changed and they're one of the most affected teams. But I'm not sure I would have listened or paid much attention because it was one race, he had a bad race. 50 seconds behind Lance Stroll is a problem for a four-time world champion, but it's his tone on the radio after the race. That was so despondent. It was so down. And you can tell he's aware that he's got to get on top of it. But yeah, if he's still in this position in 6 races' time, I don't think he'll see F1 in 2022.
Wow. Daisy Reed has a thought for us. I saw that Aston Martin launched a campaign promoting their new SUV. That's the DBX, I think I'm right in saying. Lovely looking thing. The campaign showed Seb driving one in the snow. How displeased will Aston be with Seb's performance in Bahrain? I feel it tarnishes the campaign somewhat. Ooh, well observed, Daisy. I think it's a good point, DC.
I think that any manufacturer who enters motor racing does so understanding you will have competition. You'll have good days, you'll have bad days. You have to accept that you, in an ideal world, will have the opportunity to have your name on the very top spot of the podium, but equally, like we saw in Bahrain, it could be running at the back, it could be a smoking car at the side of the racetrack, and that doesn't reflect on Aston per se because it's a Mercedes engine. If that was the case, so I think they're broad enough shoulders to see beyond a single performance or a single marketing campaign. And for all those that go, "Ooh, that might not look really good for them," there's still a loyal band of Sebastian fans who would argue he's doing a brilliant job. Clearly, they'd be delusional in that opinion right now because he's not doing a brilliant job. But that is the nature of fandom, isn't it?
Yeah.
They believe above all else and above reality at certain times what's actually happening.
Side note, just to reiterate to anybody who might be listening at Aston Martin, that DBX is a lovely looking car. I'd like to be inside that. I'd like to put my whole body inside one of those. Get in touch. I think that's enough Vettel bashing. Let's move on to passes new. Nancy Charles has been on. She says Mazepin had 2 spins in Q1, didn't make it out to Q2, and crashed out on lap 1 in the race in Bahrain. Maybe F1 isn't for the Russian.
We are jumping to some conclusions after race 1, aren't we?
Is Nancy saying it, not me?
It wasn't a great debut, to put it mildly.
I saw someone wrote online that Bottas's pit stop was longer than Mazepin's race. I mean, which is brutal. But as debuts go, Alex,
Yeah.
my, that was a bad one.
Yeah, no hiding from that. Under 30 seconds in your first Formula One Grand Prix is a nightmare for him. And he will be desperate to get on track and just get some distance between himself and Bahrain, because that's all of his nightmares come true. But he was a race winner in Formula 2. He's earned the right to be in Formula 1. Right now, he's clearly driving with no confidence behind the wheel at all. But yeah, it was difficult. It's getting to the point where it was getting difficult to watch, because you knew there was going to be a mistake coming.
DC, the Russian is so embedded in that team. The car's the colour of the Russian flag, for goodness sake. Let's be honest, chaps. Mazepin could drive that car one-handed around the track, glugging from a bottle of vodka, and he wouldn't lose that seat. What's his motivation?
Oh, he'd definitely lose his seat if he was glugging from a bottle of vodka.
I
Because
don't think he
Formula
would.
One doesn't support that at all. They've got very strict no alcohol behind the wheel rules, as emblazoned around all the various circuits. But I think that, yeah, the point being, his father is a major sponsor, partner, potential owner of that race team, and that will never go away unless he wins Grand Prix and World Championships one-handed. He'll probably never be given the credit because of having a gifted family financier to help bring him to Formula One. But yeah, it was a difficult debut. Clearly that car is somewhat tricky. Mick also had an off with a very similar sort of reaction. You know, we see it quite often with these Pirelli tyres. They correct one way, and then as a correction, the car then flicks off the track the other way. That never used to be the case in Formula One, but it is what it is. And look, the pressure of expectation is on every single driver in Formula One. If you're not able to handle that, get off the bus, get out of the car, go and do something else. There's a whole long line of people who'll step in and give it a go.
Staying with this subject for a moment, Shane Carter has a query regarding money versus talent. He says, if I was rich enough, could I get a drive in a smaller team even though I have zero talent? It's a man who knows his limitations. Shane Carter.
Well, I don't know the man, but I can only say I managed to get to Formula One with not much talent. So if you've got a work ethic, clearly you need a certain level of performance. In my day, there wasn't the super license situation that you have today, where you have to have finished in certain positions and championships to get sufficient points to get a super license, which is what is required to enter Formula One. If you don't get those, for whatever reason, then you will never sit in a Grand Prix car at a Grand Prix. Assuming you do, then you are in a very small percentage of talented racers. They're all good racers in Formula One, but as I have bored you all before, this is not about finding good. This is about finding exceptional. I thank you. Welcome back. Wake up, Steve.
All right. Well answered, DC. Fair play. Bandy has been on. This one is really going to get DC going here. Bandy, you scallywag. He asks, can we please use big old curbs, gravel, or effing brick walls to define these tracks? Because turn 4 in Bahrain was farcical. Verstappen was robbed. I think Bandy is referencing that overtake that Max had to give back, and the fact the Mercs were way out there at turn 4 for half the race. Unleash hell, David Coulthard.
Well, I totally agree. I think it's a nonsense that in modern Formula One, the pinnacle of motorsport, racing globally, that there is uncertainty as to where the limit is when you can drive. I don't follow football closely, but I keep seeing people questioning VAR, which I just find unbelievable. If you've got video technology, which is there to support the referee, how can that be questioned? It must be factually correct. And if it is questioned, they have a problem as well. So we do have a problem. Actually, Eddie Irvine used to often say when we're in the drivers' meetings about track limits, he'd go, put a wall there. That'll stop people running wide, which is a fair point. I'm so over it. It's so dull, it's so boring, and it's so embarrassing for Formula One that we're having races decided by somebody going beyond track limits.
Yeah, I feel bad for you guys. I mean, Alex, it must help as a commentator if you know the shape of the circuit.
I think it was a bad example of track limits, wasn't it? Because I remember Carlos Sainz last year, because track limits will be an issue here in Imola, and he was saying the speed of these modern cars it's easy to see a curb. It can sometimes get a little bit fine, if you consider that the first chicane, they're taking 5th gear. That is ridiculously quick for a chicane. And he's like, we know where the curb is. We don't always know where a white line is. I want gravel. And that's what he said. So when the drivers want gravel, when DC wants gravel,
Give him gravel.
just bring the gravel back, because if Max had been out there and might have kicked up a bit of gravel whilst going past Lewis, that is an even more epic overtake.
Yeah.
And you don't get the deflation of, think how that race built. All the effort he's putting in to whittle away the gap. 2 best drivers in the world going wheel to wheel. And what are we talking about? Track limits. Get an answer so we can stop talking about it when you start talking about the spectacle of the racing. Because it did feel like VAR. It did feel like the joy of it, the spectacle of it, was diminished by the fact that, Lewis was out there 29 times, gained X amount. He was in a part of the racetrack that he could use, Max passed in a part of the racetrack where he couldn't use. How do you explain that to the casual fan?
Yeah, everything you've both said just makes perfect sense. I don't understand why the powers that be can't see that.
Get it right. Get it right.
Moving on, Gail Moody has a question. Is this Red Bull might beat Mercedes in 2021 thing real, or is it just a glitch in the Matrix?
It's real.
In a word,
Real.
Yeah.
Alex, do you concur?
I completely concur. They've got the fastest car. They should have won the race. A few elements went against them, but yeah, I'd expect them to win in Imola.
It's almost too good to be true. I just don't want to expose myself to that level of emotional hurt. I'm the guy who, my wife says, it's going to snow today. I'm like, it won't snow. Of course it won't bloody snow. It's too hot. Because I want it to snow so much. Do you know what I mean?
No. I don't. So you hope for the other thing to make it
because
actually
I
happen.
don't want to be disappointed. I want to manage expectation. So I'm firmly expecting Mercedes to win this weekend, and all of us come into play on Sunday at the end of the show, like, well, there you go. It's Mercedes again.
I still don't fully understand how you can live your life in denial of the situation that's there right now. There's a little thing called reality, and if you live within that space, I find it's not disappointing.
I find I get disappointed all the time, which is why I set myself up.
Well, get out of that fantasy
in
world.
that bleak manner. Because when it happens, then it's just so delicious, so good.
I still think you need professional help.
Yeah, no one's denying that. Nathan B asks, DC, if you were in Lewis's position this year and won that 8th title, would you retire?
Yes, I would. I think that would be an incredible moment for him to step away from the sport. Whether he wins an 8th or not doesn't change, I think, global perception of what a brilliant driver he is. I think it would. He's entered this championship with the goal of winning races and winning a championship, so it absolutely is part of his desire for this year. But I don't think he'll be thinking 8th. I think he's just thinking world title, and it just so happens that it could be the 8th.
I find that hard to believe, Alex. I can't believe he isn't thinking 8 has a nice ring to it, because then I'm undeniably the greatest ever. I've surpassed Schumacher. I'm the best. He must think like that.
I think he wants that place in history.
Yeah.
He always shrugs off the records, but I think he wants to be the outright GOAT in terms of drivers' titles. If he did retire, I hope we've got fans at the end of the season, or whenever he wins it. He's won in Mexico a couple of times. You don't want him winning in front of empty grandstands. If he is going to go, you want a champion's reception for him, because what he's done has been phenomenal.
Don't you think it's such a shame that the greatest of all time has to be GOAT? Because it just doesn't conjure up images of something, nothing against goats. Love the animals. Yeah. But, if it was something like a lion or a tiger or something really, I don't know, silverback gorilla.
Yeah, that does sound a bit more sexy, I got to be honest.
How can we make the equivalent?
Well, we just need to come up with an abbreviation for being the best ever, using the letters that spell out tiger.
Okay, good luck.
Good job this isn't live.
Let's move on. Andrew Whitcomb asks, again, DC, this one's for you. Does DC still have cake up his snout after the Verstappen cake incident in Bahrain? Do you?
I do indeed, and it's a very, as it continues to grow through age, it's a really good receptacle. I think I'll be eating cake out of that for at least another couple of weeks.
Man, he stitched you up so bad, didn't he?
Yeah.
I was watching it unfold live, and I swear to God, I thought, DC, don't lean into that cake, and you did, and he got you.
Well, you, being a lifelong professional television person, wouldn't be under the same stress and pressure that I was under, knowing that I had to interview the top 3 in qualifying. And all I'm thinking is, don't let Steve down, don't let Channel 4 down. And that overcomes my ability to then see bigger picture stuff. So you could take the watch from my wrist at that moment, you could take my wallet, you could steal my virginity and I wouldn't even realize. I'm so in the moment of not getting it wrong.
Oh, man, it was epic. It was a lot of fun. All right, Rod Stewart's been on. And before everybody gets excited, I checked. It's not Rod Stewart, the singer. It's Rod Stewart, the systems analyst from Crew, which doesn't make his question any less relevant or important. Thank you, Rob. Here it is, short and sweet. What happened to Cyril Abiteboul? Which is a very good question. So, Alex, we came back from the winter break and Cyril didn't make the transition to Alpine team principal for some reason. What's the scoop?
Essentially, I think the expectation at the end of last year was that he was going to remain in that setup as part of the Renault group.
Yeah.
And a bit of a shock that he disappeared. A few rumours in the paddock that he might reappear at another team, but it was a surprise that he completely exited rather than taking a new role.
And he got out of getting that tattoo of Daniel Ricciardo's honey badger, or whatever he's going to have. I don't know, but that'll never happen now.
No, I don't suppose Daniel's going to use any energy tracking him down for that. But actually, I heard it's the French have a very, very short working week and an annual amount of hours. I heard that he basically logged all his working hours for the year in the first 2 weeks of January, and he's taking the rest of the year off. Unions will support him in that. He'll pop up again in about December.
Marla Patel asks, whilst watching the Bahrain GP, I found myself thinking of Kevin Magnussen and Romain Grosjean. I wondered how they would have felt watching it. Would they be sad? Would they feel strange? Maybe they couldn't even watch. Could you shed some light, DC?
I think they both would probably be watching because they're still racing, and Formula One is a exciting form of motorsport. I think they had their opportunity in Formula One, maybe not with the best cars at the right time, and they've still got active racing careers to look forward to. So they can have a long, happy, and successful professional career. It just won't involve Formula One.
Can you remember the first race you watched as a civilian, as a spectator, if you will?
Yeah, well, I stopped at the end of 2008 when Nico Rosberg took me off at turn 1 in Brazil. Not that I...
Not bitter about it at all.
Well, I tend to hold a grudge for a lifetime. So he's probably got another 30 years, depending, give or take, whether I outlive the family or not. But that was Brazil 2008. And then Melbourne 2009, I was standing there with a microphone trying to work out which end do I talk into. So, but I remember Martin Brundle telling me that the first time he went to a Grand Prix and the cars went out, he had a panic because he thought, oh, I'm not in the car.
Oh, wow.
I didn't have that. I was still reflecting on the 18-year-old single malt I'd enjoyed the night before qualifying, and I didn't have to worry about getting in a race car. And the joy of not racing anymore is you don't lose anymore. You don't have the disappointment of lack of performance anymore. Television supports you. That's why I'm still here.
And thank God you are, DC. Magic Ronson wants to know, Ferrari have said they think it will take 4 more races before it's certain how much progress it has made with its 2021 engine. Simply, why? He wants to know.
Well, variation of track. If you consider a couple of years ago, if we'd had testing in Bahrain and gone straight to Bahrain for the Grand Prix, we would have thought the Ferrari were going to run away with the championship because Charles Leclerc would have put it on pole and we would have been like, wow, they're fast. And what do we see for the other races, the other circuits? A completely different picture in Mercedes domination. So if you consider that, they just simply need to run at different configurations that test different aspects of their car, and then they will know. They do think they've made progress. They are happy, and Charles was 4th on the grid in Bahrain. But they just need to have different type of tracks before they know.
Well answered. Vios Archantakis, apologies if I butchered that, Vios, wants to know, do you think that changing the layout last corner to become a straight at Imola will improve or hinder overtaking opportunities?
Well, straights aren't challenging. Everyone can be as fast as each other, or certainly as fast as your teammate, assuming the same drag levels on straights. If you took a bunch of corners in Monaco and made it more straight, then there would be more overtaking opportunities. But the track is the track. So a lot of history here. They've changed the track, obviously, over the years to adapt certain corners, but you just got to race what you're given and get on with it. And every Grand Prix is different.
Alex?
They've changed the DRS detection point.
Okay.
I know this is thrilling stuff. I know everyone will be captivated with this, but last year there were loads of drivers who were within a second, went through the Ravazzas at the end of the lap, couldn't stay within a second, couldn't get past. We only had 6 overtakes here last year.
Yeah.
So they've changed that. Hopefully that leads to more overtaking into the Tamburello chicane.
Okay, nice. Thank you, chaps. Mariana Rodat Massa asks, would you chaps be darlings and explain all this sprint race malarkey to me? Good idea, bad idea, are they even doable?
Anything's doable. Everything's achievable if the powers that be decide to do it. I personally think it's fine what we have because
doesn't qualifying consistently work and entertain? Why are we messing with qualifying?
I've lived through Formula One long enough to see various changes we've had.
Remember 2016?
Well, going way back, we used to qualify on a Friday and a Saturday, and that really gave a sense of purpose to Friday. They cancelled that because if it rained on Saturday, no one went out, and of course, people in the grandstands weren't really entertained. You could solve that by having a combination of the 2 days add to it. We've had no pit stops during Grand Prix. We've had refueling during Grand Prix. We've had all sorts of changes. The essence of Formula One hasn't changed in that the fastest car driver combination tends to be at the front at the key moments. And by penalising is exactly what I think happens in Formula 2 and Formula 3, by penalising being fast and then putting you 10th or 11th or however it works, it's way too I don't have enough heartbeats left in my lifetime to try and work out who came up with those rules and regulations. I think people understand fastest person. Fastest team, and when you start playing around with that to artificially create entertainment, then that's what you are. You're an entertainment show rather than a sport.
Alex, what are your thoughts on all this sprint race malarkey, as Mariana called it?
Well, they clearly want to get more races in without having to go to more rounds. Okay, that's the aim. You have a race on a Saturday, people tune in for that, more TV viewership, more money, everyone's happy. You'd still have qualifying on the Friday, and then you would simply have a third of a Grand Prix on a Saturday, then you'd have a whole of a Grand Prix on a Sunday. That's the format they're proposing. 3 races, they're suggesting that's done. Interested to see how it works, but I do love when the pressure's on, when it's laps at the limit, when it's low fuel, when the drivers are showing their complete capability of mastering it. I think there's a real, I think that's great, and I love the fact that it builds to the Sunday crescendo.
Awesome.
So, yeah, I mean, you said it. I don't think if you looked at Formula One as a whole, I don't think I'd look at qualifying going right. That needs to change. I think it's great.
Like I mentioned at DC, the last time we messed with it was 2016, and that was just a disaster. It was awful. You remember?
I don't, actually, because I think I took a year out in 2016. But I remember when we went to single lap qualifying in Formula One, and if you were penalised somehow by, if you were, did you win the previous race, you were first out, or I can't even remember. We had all so many different things. But in the end, the Grand Prix, the Grand Prize, is about the 305 kilometre or 306 kilometre race format, with the exception of Monaco, where it's 260 kilometres, I believe.
Ooh, look at you, knowing stuff. Last one. This is from Derek McCarthy. Having read DC's book on business, The Winning Formula, I know him to have a savvy business mind. Did you send him this question, DC?
It's my own.
It's from a burner, isn't it? It's from a burner.
Derek goes on. Can I ask what DC thinks the best way to negotiate a pay rise is? Interesting.
Well, look at the person that has the decision-making capabilities.
And kidnap their family.
Well, that might work in Wales. But I think it's all about having compelling reasons, isn't it? If there's a compelling reason why you think you should be being paid more, and the company and the business and the decision maker has a compelling reason to make sure that that is matched and delivered, then that's what a negotiation is, and that's what an agreement is. No one will ever pay more than they have to for something, any more than you would expect to do that yourself. So I think that one of the most difficult things is to have those face-to-face conversations, because people fear rejection. But actually, the worst case that happens when you ask the question is you're exactly back where you were before, which is you haven't got what you wanted, but what it might do is then give you a direction for where you want to be in the future. So
Interesting.
rather than working for someone, maybe work for yourself, and you can set your own salary. I'll pay myself $1 million.
So in short, try not to be too British and suck it up. Go in there with the ability to ask the question and talk about money. And just say, this is what I want. This is what I think I'm worth.
Yeah, and you've got to have a reason to justify why you think that is. You can't just go, it's Monday, I woke
'Cause I'm
up
bloody
feeling
brilliant.
that, yeah. So it's about value. Any business, I've had it in businesses I've invested in the past where there's a perception, because you're a shareholder or an owner, that you're wealthy. And therefore the staff will go, well, we'll have some of that wealth. Now, the actual business may not be making money at that time. So they're confusing two different things. They're confusing individual investor wealth with the actual business that they're working for. And the business they're working for is the result of everyone's efforts. So if that business is not making money, then everyone's efforts you can't go, well, I'm doing my job. It must be someone else that's not doing their job, and that's why the business isn't making money. So, you need team in any of these situations, and people either buy into team or they don't. And I think that Formula One is a perfect example of that, because Lewis is paid more than the entire workforce together at Mercedes in an individual. Wow. But his team love him for it, and they know he delivers, and all of their efforts mean that when he puts the car on track, they can enjoy seeing their efforts and their work be number one in the world.
Executed perfectly.
Yeah.
And that's the winning formula. Okay, we are almost out of time. I think there's just enough, though, if you were so inclined, for me to perform a poem I wrote about Imola.
Oh, yeah.
It's a little doodle I did. Would you like to hear?
Well, first of all, do I need tissues for this?
You might. You might.
No, allow me to get some tissues then.
I'm just serious, because I love this track so much that I decided I'd write it down on a bit of paper. But listen, in all seriousness, I'm putting myself out there, okay? I'm revealing my inner emotions to you about this track. And I think that takes courage. So, I'm an artist.
Can you get on with it, please?
I'm just asking you, don't be knobs, okay? All right?
Okay, I didn't manage to get tissues. I do have some kitchen roll.
That'll do. That'll do. All right, it's called I Kiss Your Asphalt. No, honestly, if you're going to take the mick and giggle in, I'm not going to do it, because this is serious.
What?
You've got a look on your face like you think I'm an idiot. This is special.
I'm not laughing.
All right, listen, this comes from a really honest place.
If I just go to the round of applause, will you not do it?
All right, here I go. I'm not going to do it. Please, serious now. This is serious. Emilia Romagna, you so sweet. Oh, mama. I like to watch you in your racing trim, taking on 20 boys like it ain't no thing. Them boys, they go too fast. I just want to slow down and make it last. I want to yum up your sexy curves. You make my knees knock, you rattle my nerves. I want to take the time to lay some rubber. Say you'll be mine, don't make me blubber. Emilia Romagna, I want to be your last lap lover. Emilia Romagna, you so sweet. Oh, mama. Thank you.
That was brilliant. You might need to explain to our listeners who Emilia Romagna is.
They know. This is on the marbles. These people live and breathe F1. They know who Emilia Romagna is. It's the area, isn't it, where the track is set.
Exactly. And they already knew it.
Sexy ass mountains.
Evocative.
All right, that's us. If you like what you've heard, then do those things that people who like podcasts do. Until next time, may the downforce be with you, and may all your flags be checkered. Goodbye.